Okay, I'll go ahead and bring the May 25th Planning Commission meeting to order, and let's start off with the roll call.
Commissioner Lamb?
Here.
Commissioner Tonelli?
Here.
Commissioner Whitmer?
Present.
Chair Lane?
Here.
Commissioner Sokolov? Here.
All right, the next item on the agenda, just for those of you who haven't been here before, we have a section that has to do with public comments that are for items not on the agenda, just in case something's brought up, and sometimes there's something brought up that's put on a future agenda, and that helps us identify issues that we might want to address. So is there anyone here to talk on something other than what is on the agenda tonight? All right, then I'll open and close the public hearing. 1, 2. All right. Just real quick, if you just came in, did you want to talk on something other than what's on the agenda tonight? Okay, good. All right, so we will make sure everybody's included then on that. Okay, then we have the meeting minutes from April 27th. Any revisions or modifications needed on that? All right, I need a motion in a second.
I move we approve the minutes as written.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, 5-0. All right, then let's go to the new business. And the new business format on this, we'll have a couple of items for discussion, and we'll still have a public comment section on this. So we'll first hear from the staff, and they'll give us an overview of the item. Then we'll open up the floor for public comment, and we'll close it, and we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion or action as appropriate. So we'll start with an update on item 4A, discussion of Atherton Municipal Code sidewall and end wall regulations.
Thank you. So this item was discussed at several different planning commission meetings where we had quite a few special structure permit for the increased sidewall height. And we talked about the issue with contemporary home designs and kind of the difficulty with the current code limitations. Can you scroll up a little bit? So, as you know, we have sidewall limited to 22 feet in the R1A zoning district, and then the end walls can go all the way up to 30 feet. So I have some very simple graphics that I included in the staff report. So it works pretty well. Just scroll up a little bit more. There you go. Leave it there for a minute. It works well if you have kind of a simple, little shed barn design where you've got that end wall and the side walls broken up by that roof eave line. It's much more difficult in the other example when you have a contemporary home because you're going to end there with that solid wall, and they're limited to 22 feet. A lot of the times when I meet with an architect, they're like, well, we broke the plane. We went up 22, and then something else happens, and then we're going to go up again. That's really not the same wall, right? I said, well, it's in that same vertical plane. We see it, we read it as a wall, even though it may not be continuous. So that's how we interpret the code. If you can go down to the next one. So just to give you an example of what some other jurisdictions do, a lot of times there's design review. And so, I'm sorry. Yeah. So in the design review process, the code may say, break up the elevation with, different articulations and different, bays, and, it's got kind of design elements in there that then the staff member or the design review body look and make an interpretation of, right? So we don't have that design review process here. I'm not recommending we consider a design review process at this time, but that's how most jurisdictions handle it. I think we're very unique in that, and a lot of people in the community really appreciate that unique aspect. Another item that's more, that you could consider is kind of a daylight plane, is what they call it. So that's where, maybe you go, every city's different, you go up 22 feet, and then you've got this, 45-degree angle that there can't be anything in there. And it gives them a little bit of working room. So I have examples that I just grabbed from some other jurisdictions of what that might look like. So that's something we could consider. And I'd really love to hear some of the architects' comments on, what they think might work for them, because every situation is unique. In your staff report, we did have one architect give us some examples and kind of show you how the massing really is broken up. And again, one of the situations that's also unique and wonderful in Atherton is we work with some very highly qualified architects, and so we see some beautiful designs. And that's not true in all communities. Sometimes there's some other issues there that it's not such high quality. So that's where I'm a little more comfortable with having that objective criteria because of the significant investment that people are making here. So I think I'd be happy to hear any questions. I've also invited a number of architects here because, you know, they're really the experts in this area. I'd love to hear from them. Hopefully they have some good suggestions. I challenge them to help us out a little bit. And if you have direction, we can continue to study it. We can research other code issues. We can come back with more graphics. Not looking for a decision tonight, just starting the conversation.
Can you go to the last item on your slide just to see it in kind of color?
The graphic that was submitted by,
yeah, the graphic that has
very bottom.
the building in a building look. I think that's what it was intended
Just
to be.
all the way down to the bottom, the last, yeah.
That is, I took that to be an example of what the structure of the building would be if you were like doing a French provincial as opposed to modern, and that's what I said. One more, two more.
Very bottom, yeah.
Yeah. Then that would be a normal design we might see,
I think
and then
that
this one is
yeah.
the contained version of a modern inside that French provincial kind of effect, right?
Right.
I just want to make sure that was what I was interpreting. It was
And is the
harder to see in
architect here
black.
that provide that graphic?
Yes.
Okay, so they can answer questions for you on that specifically.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Great.
I got one.
Okay, cool.
How does the square footage compare between the two designs? Because we have some restrictions based on.
Yeah, so we would, I mean, no matter what you establish for, you know, the sidewall, end wall, height bulk, whatever, we still have that maximum floor area limit that I'm not suggesting change. The code does have some requirements for kind of double height vertical space. So I think if it's over 16 feet, we count it twice in floor area. So we measure from exterior wall to exterior wall on that plane. And so, you know, if you have a large space that's empty, like a decorative staircase, it would still count twice in the floor area.
Right.
Yeah.
So what my thought was is that those restrictions prevent this bulk shape from really being implemented.
Yeah, and there's also a limitation on the square footage of the second floor. It's
Right.
a percent of the floor area. So we do have, I agree
Yeah.
with you.
Okay.
I just want to follow that up. So it limits it today, right, in terms of the second floor? And in terms of any of the comments coming from anyone out there, I'd be curious to see what that is too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Your turn.
Today.
Any questions?
Mm.
Okay. Any other questions, staff? All right, so then I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing and we can hear from some more experts. All right.
Hi, everybody. I am Jacqueline Greenmeyer, as you see in your letter, from Colsat and Associates Architecture. I'm a little bit new to your town, but we do work in a lot of neighborhoods nearby, Los Altos Hills, City of Los Altos, and farther south where we're in Los Gatos. But some of the examples that you had provided for other jurisdictions, rules, those are very common. I see that everywhere. That's a very standard. I kind of wanted to, I pretty much put everything in the letter that we felt was some of the more difficult issues to deal with the rules. And kind of wanted to see if you had any questions about that, if you have any more questions about this. This example here was not accounting for the square footage, but it was also accounting for the fact that they could create a facade, a front elevation that looked like that, and then reduce the second floor on the backside. So it's not necessarily something to do with max square footages, but it does illuminate what is possible on the front elevation, and that's what everybody sees from the street. So obviously nobody wants to build something that brutal, but I was just trying to illustrate what's possible and how we feel that what we proposed with our latest design was something that we felt that was close to what your rules should be able to provide for. I know that Lisa had asked for us to come up with a suggested rule, and I didn't have a chance to put that together before we submitted these drawings, but in terms of daylight plane, that's exactly what we were thinking. One suggestion, I know that they have the 22-foot plate, and a lot of times in this modern architecture, we would like to put a flat roof on top of that. That adds an extra 12 inches on top. That's just framing that you need, and then a small parapet which contains the water on your roof, which could be 6 to 12 inches. That's 22 to 23 feet. If you could start the daylight plane there at your normal front setback, most people can work within that very easily all day long. And then you also have your exceptions for towers and dormers, which are perfectly still legitimate. They all work for, you know, all the different styles of architecture. It does help when the code isn't specifically talking about in the sidewall rule and the end wall rule very much seem to are design criteria that have very much to do with traditional architecture, and it just doesn't go with modern. Another additional exhibit is I don't know if I can pass this, but it's just what we ended up coming up with. Our design, that's our original design behind the glass. We kind of turned the model into glass and used the model. But I can show you what we ended up having to do to go ahead and meet the requirements of the town. And what we didn't want to do, but it was what ended up meeting it. I don't really think or feel that it was, I don't think it helped. The end result, I don't think the end result is any better, more attractive. It doesn't, I don't think the end result is less massive.
This is the top one, right? So everybody else can follow.
It's the same design, but
Yeah.
we've made some modifications. I've kind of pointed out the modifications.
Just up of like 3 or 4.
Right. Yeah, that one there. So what we wanted to do was be a little more pure with our rectangular and geometric forms, and then still incorporate some of our sloped roofs. And we had to add an eave to our upper left-hand corner bedroom. We had to add an eave to our secondary dwelling unit because it's over the secondary dwelling height limit for our wall plane. And we had to lower, thought it was interesting that because you can see, this is one of the examples right here of that Lisa had brought up about, we assumed when we read the rules 22 feet up, then that's where the wall plane would, this element here is about 10, 11 feet tall, and then this goes back 8 feet. And nowhere in the code is that, is there any exception because we've gone back far enough, then now we can start to go up taller again. You know, something that not clearly does not seem as massive anymore. But one of the things we had to do was lower this element because from this elevation, you could see it. That's a flat elevation, but anybody standing here would never be able to see that. So it just seemed very counterintuitive for us when we were trying to make these design changes, and we wanted to follow logic. We want to do things that make sense. We want to meet your rules and your standards. But some of the things that we had to do didn't make a lot of logical sense for us. So that was the difficult part of trying to get through the design process.
And how tall was the peak on these, basically the metal part of the
This awning right
No,
here,
the
this
top
is
one.
a 10-foot door, so this is 11.
the top one, the very top of the diagonal one?
Right here?
No, yeah, up this spot right on there,
Sorry.
right on the very
Yeah.
top,
This one right here?
above that.
Up above that?
The
Yeah.
roof,
The roof
as
line?
it goes all the way back, that's the one place it hits 30 feet.
Okay, that's right.
Is that the same elevation for that peaked roof on the left as well? In front
No,
of the
that's
tree?
much lower. It's just
Okay.
closer to us.
Okay,
That roof goes farther back, but
Okay.
that's quite a bit lower.
Did you also explain why you added the roof on the?
Right here, yeah, so we added a roof, we were told 22 feet. So we have 11-foot ceilings on the first floor, and we have 10-foot ceilings on the second floor. We have 12 inches of framing, which is pretty minimal in between the two floors. And then we had a 12-inch framing for the roof, and all of that added up is over 22 feet. That's just the raw numbers. So what we had to do was bring this down to a 9-foot 4 ceiling, and then add a hefty eave, at least 1 foot deep, and we actually had to bring down a soffit to get down to that 22-foot line, or else the ceiling in here would be more like 8.5, which we weren't, 8.5 to 9, which we didn't feel was acceptable to a house like this.
Okay.
So, in your experience in general, getting away from your specific model here,
Yeah,
when you're dealing with various different
jurisdictions, yeah.
modern designs, and you mentioned you can work all day with 23 or 24. What is a number that you can work all day? 25 feet? And when you're talking about different designs, modern designs, that allows you to do what you want to do.
Well, I think what is good about what you've got laid out in your code is that you have a standard for what you want to see the majority of your elevation at a certain height, and then you have all these exceptions because you want to see the ins and outs and you want to see the ups and downs. And I think, like I said, the 24 feet I think is very reasonable, and then you can continue up in you know, either flat and step up, but the daylight plane would create that stepping, you know, reaction with your design.
Okay.
So you're saying a 24-foot sidewall with a step back and then go up to 30 feet or 20 feet?
Right,
or
whatever
something?
the height, your height limit's 30,
Right.
so then you could continue up at that angle anywhere in that volume. That'd be a really
This
good
is a hard
solution.
one, I don't know about you guys, but not being an architect, this is a hard one to even ask the right questions on, right? I'm sitting here thinking if there were 20 other things, I could ask the right questions, but
Right.
this is, not being an architect, it's a hard one. So how different from what you proposed there, maybe a good question is, based on what our code says today, how different is that than what you can do here in Atherton today?
Well, what I passed around is the changes we made to meet code. So that meets.
This roof,
No, so that does
So
mean
that
meet code,
meets.
yeah.
What
It
I
actually
just
looks
passed
better
around
than
meets the code. And I know it's not a lot different for most people. You know, you just look, oh well, you just had to add a little eave there. It does. I mean, for a purist, for someone that wants to create art, and it just kind of killed me to see that all these different wood elements weren't matching. And if we added a sloped roof there and made it taller with that sloped roof, we just simply added a sloped roof and went up, which is a taller element, that would be acceptable. And that's where the give is, that we were like, why can't we do something that is even shorter?
Right.
With the increased setback, your sidewalls can go up higher.
Right. The another key difference with a lot of jurisdictions that the setbacks here are the most considerable of any jurisdiction I've ever known. So it makes the footprint, you know, the people that are building in this neighborhood are going to try to get as much as they can out of these lots. They are going to go as big as they can, and usually it is not the setback that is holding back when we're designing something. It's usually the max square footage. We have more building footprint and we've got oceans of footprint, you know, space on the lot, but our floor area maximums really confine us, and we can't really build out to those setbacks. Usually we just kind of go to the front. But in this situation, it is the building setbacks that are constraining us, not the max square footage.
I think on that example, what could be workable is if you had that increased setback to the offending element and not for the entire residence.
Right.
That would be something that they might be able to work within.
Exactly.
But the
If that
difficulty is
one-
that you have to squish in the whole house and not just the
Or
tall
just that
portion.
one elevation. If you want to go super tall on this one side, then that one side needs to be moved in.
Yeah.
But
Right.
every single side having to come in because
Right.
of one element, that is what is very difficult. Very difficult.
Yeah, and I think a good example is that item we saw
Yeah.
last month,
Right.
where the offending element was so much
Right.
farther in, but they also had to bring the whole house in.
Right.
And I think you pointed out that distance was pretty
Mhm.
significant. So that's another option to consider.
The other options that we do see quite a bit are first-story setbacks and second-story setbacks.
Right.
We see that all the time as well. You know, the front and the back have a more severe setback on the second floor, and then there's just certain exceptions. But you know, you have a stepping, either a stepping scenario for your building envelope or a sloping scenario. But so if the first floor was able to come out a little bit more, then the second floor with the more taller, more offensive element is farther in. It doesn't feel as massive the farther it's pushed in.
Yeah, one of the aspects of, so living in a California modern mid-century though, is that this particular design element, these corners have a tendency to be big glass areas. I mean, that's a feature of these houses. And so that actually creates more light and more stuff in the design that can be more, it's kind of ironic that one of the big Eichlers that was in our neighborhood was knocked down and one of these was put in. And so it's like architecturally correct. But the windows are much more obvious from a number of different areas. So part of the reason I think for that sort of squish back is part of the design element of this is to sort of let the light in. And so that's one aspect of it I think that we haven't talked about very much.
It adds some lightness to the mass. It doesn't feel as
Right.
heavy. The more glass you have, the more you can kind of see through and there's depth.
Yeah, but it
But
creates
on
more light for the neighbor.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean light as in,
Yeah,
Neighbor,
Well,
it affects his privacy.
yeah.
you know, it's both way. You know, privacy is always a two-way situation,
right.
right? I mean, the people that are living there
Yeah, right.
want
It can be
privacy
seen.
too,
Right,
right? So it's
right.
it's a two-way. Everybody wants privacy. Everybody wants the screening on every side. It's beneficial to both parties everywhere.
Yeah, the way I
So-
did it was he would lower those eaves down like on the big one we have is like 7 feet, so you bump your head on it. So that didn't work either, or 6 feet, or whatever it
Right.
was. Yeah. So all right, what kind of percentage of your homes are going this way right now?
Lately it's been getting to closer to 20-25%.
That's what we're
it's
seeing
getting,
here,
and it's just getting higher and higher.
Okay. And the square footage on these homes in your other neighborhoods, is it larger because of the format?
No, actually, the square footage is just most of the time the restriction is the lot size, and we have generous lot sizes in your neighborhood, so that is what makes the bigger home. And in that, a lot of the other jurisdictions, it has more to do with their lot size than their.
But I meant from a design on the same
On
lot
the same
size,
property.
same property.
How much square
How much
footage?
more? Is this?
This is a 1 acre lot.
So does this? But I mean, does this format to this design create more space for the owner than the other design?
You know, I think it's about the same for another jurisdiction. I mean,
I think the question is if you had a contemporary design compared to
contemporary
a
versus
different
traditional.
Right.
traditional architecture style, is there more square footage in this?
It makes no difference.
Okay, that's why I was just double clicking on.
Contemporary versus traditional, no. It's just the roofs.
Because the box looked like it might.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, other questions? All right, good, thank you for the help,
Thank
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah, no,
That was
no.
really a huge help.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Somebody
Thank you
else,
guys for listening to
thank
us.
you, thank you. Anyone else coming up?
Can we open the other presentation?
Hi, my name is Mia Maraki. I am a principal at Swat Myers Architects. I've been before you before. That's my presentation from last year. So Lisa had asked Bob Swat to come in, but I'm here on his behalf. We really enjoy working in Atherton. We have many beautiful completed, awarded around the world projects here, and one's currently under construction, and just really enjoy working in Atherton. But we have come across this end wall, sidewall condition on multiple occasions. And with we only do modern architecture, so this is the only work you'll probably see from us here. And the problem that we usually come up with is, as the one before said, when our walls are in the same plane as our roof, we're penalized because all of a sudden our roof becomes counted as the wall height. And she,
Can you scroll down?
sorry, I didn't expect to give this presentation
No.
again, but
Please no.
if you go a
I
couple
remember
more slides
distinctly
down.
though.
Yeah.
Both times you gave it.
Yes. Probably one more. Yeah. So in this slide, it's there's a wall plate, and then there's the roof structure. And it's when we combine those two that all of a sudden it becomes an issue. And this 22 feet is what gets us. And I just wanted to get up and say that, you know, we love working in Atherton, and we would really like to work with you guys to help come up with something that allows for more modern architecture. And, you know, in many jurisdictions we work in, it's simply a height limit, that you'd have one height limit and that's what you can go up to. And with the generous setbacks in Atherton, you know, we're not as constrained about where we can build on the site, so we can be respectful of the edges and, you know, not with the intention of creating something imposing, but just being allowed the same height, you know, ceiling heights as something with a roof like this. Just because we have a flat roof, we don't want shorter ceilings. So that's, I think.
Can I just, on this, if I can give another explanation from this graphic? So what we've done, you know, this is a sidewall here, just pretend it's the main residence. And then that we consider to be a roof element if it has some depth to it. So it comes out, it has an eave overhang, it's at least a foot. If it's a solid plane and it just goes all the way up, I say no, that's the sidewall continuing. So I don't think that's better architecture. It's not a good solution, but it's kind of how we've tried to work within the code to find a way, you know, to achieve what they're trying to do.
So the number 2 and number 4, if I go left to right, are the same height, and the interpretation of the one on number 4 is it has to drop down because of the roof element. Is that what it is?
Well, this one here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what they did was the side wall kind of went all the way up.
Yeah.
And there was no break. There was,
Right.
it didn't transition to
I
a
remember that.
roof. Yeah. So, and it's, I don't know, do you have the house design at all? I don't remember what's in here. Lock it.
It's looking great.
Yeah.
You can go pass it on Atherton Avenue.
I did that the other day.
Well, it hit us at the accessory structures. And basically we had the roof turned down to a wall, and that was the condition. There's one probably towards the top of.
Then maybe that one 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's look at that one. So they're also like those, you know, these parapets that are kind of maybe screening mechanical equipment or something, you know, way in there, that still is a sidewall.
Right.
But when you kind of come out and have this big eave overhang there, that's a roof. So.
But that
doesn't
roof
make better
becomes a
architecture.
sidewall as soon as you connect it. So even
Right.
though this is the wall and that's the roof plane, and clearly the roof plane on this side, all of a sudden then we were against
Right.
Yeah.
the height constraint. So,
Right.
you know, if you were to define it as top plate of wall, you know, and then the roof can be the roof, that would also be, instead of this perpendicular axes and declaring one as one height versus one as the other height, instead of walls versus roofs.
So based on that example, 2, 3, and 4, right? How often is 4 where you have the wall and the roof appearing to have the exact same point? Is that an architecture?
But you know what, it was in the image she showed as well. It was the same
100%.
thing.
Yeah.
Those wood elements had the same,
Right.
you know, it was a wall that came up and became the roof. So, and you know, it's something in modern architecture. Yes, we also love the overhangs, but at sometimes we just want to quiet it, and it's one volume. So that's where this sidewall condition really.
Well, that's what I heard earlier. I thought I heard sometimes, not always.
Not always.
Right.
But you know, if you have, you know, unlike this, if we're talking about a square volume, it's going to be the same height all the way around. And as soon as you want to pull in that roof overhang, it becomes taller than what is allowed.
Yeah, so I'm either forcing them to stay in that 22 feet, or I'm forcing them to do some roof overhang on it.
Right.
Yeah, no, clearly, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But all of your submissions have had at least one wall with that feature to it that we've talked about, as
Yeah.
I recall, right?
I mean, this is, you know, our wall in this example is very thin, but she had the same thing, but it was more of a square volume. So it's a very common thing in modern architecture to, you know, we're trying to simplify with forms rather than all these different intricate shapes. But it's that simplicity of the form that's not working with the end wall sidewall condition. So, thank you.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Jude Carrick, Pacific Peninsula.
Where's your presentation, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to. Yeah, so I'm going to defer to the experts, which are very good. But all I wanted to say tonight, first of all, I really appreciate Lisa connecting with the architectural community. I actually reached out to Bob Swat, Steve Simpson, Tim Chappelle at Arcanum Architecture. These are all highly qualified, superior architects that, you know, when I had the conversation with them, the comments were all the same. You know, all of us are struggling with this issue. My practice, I've been practicing in town for almost 30 years now, and I've seen the code evolve a little bit. But now, as my architectural style is leaning a little more towards contemporary and modern, I'm coming up against many of the same issues that they are in their daily practice. So, and I think this eats up a lot of staff time. I know Lisa and Holly and everybody down there over the years have answered the same questions over and over and over and over again. And like I said, now that my practice is evolving into a little bit more contemporary designs, we're running into some of the same issues. So I don't have any examples and I don't have any solutions, but I just want to let you know that I think we're willing to sit down and, you know, try to brainstorm and come up with some ideas that are, you know, receptive to you as a commission and gives us some flexibilities. Because I think qualified architects will appreciate the rules that give them some opportunities. I think what everybody's hesitant in is the people that come along and find a way to work around the rules and create these things. And I think there's a few examples I can cite over the years, specifically the mansard roof issue that created a floor area controversy as well as a bulk and mass. So I think something has to be done in the code to, one, address this style of home, which I think is just, at least from what I'm seeing, is going to continue to be a popular request from our clientele. The clients are getting younger, they want more contemporary style homes, or actually the converse. I have some older clients that are, you know, that's their dream home, is to have a home more in this style. So once again, whatever we can do collectively, and it's not going to be tonight, but I think if we get a lot of good input, I don't think it's necessarily a daylight plane, because daylight planes are for cities that are on tighter lots, right, and they're worried about shading onto other properties. We don't have that because of the large setbacks. So maybe it's a building envelope, whether it's the wedding cake or a slope, or maybe some percentage of kind of roof area that's allowed to exceed the 22-foot sidewall height. I don't know if it's 24 feet is the right number, because, you know, good architectural practice says build a house a little bit higher out of the ground, 2 feet, and then people want 10-foot ceilings, and it's very difficult to get a 12-foot floor to work, or 12-inch floor to work. So if you add up all the numbers, you're never going to have an ideal number. There's always going to be a limitation. So I just, once again, want to encourage you to continue the discussion. I'm willing to reach out again to these other architects that are doing a lot of work and try to get them to give Lisa some feedback. And then last thing I wanted to say, I think there's a lot of examples of homes now that have been built that we can actually take photographs and show you what the implications of the current rules are. So instead of looking at imageries, you know, they're out there, and they could have been that much better, I think, if they were allowed to exceed some of these heights. So that's my presentation.
Thank you. I've got a question for you, though. Sure. Yeah. Actually, I'll end up asking all of you again. So one of the aspects of changing the code is the domino theory that goes with it, which is like the beginning of the, okay, this is the beginning of the new cheating, right? Yeah. So, so we need to know how this would be misused if it were to be changed, all right? So we don't have to do it tonight, but it's important for us to understand, as creative as you all are, if you were going to beat this rule, how would you beat it, and what would it look like when you did, and what would be the problem with that? Because one of the safety nets of not changing it right now is, you know, we get to review everything. Yes, it's a thrash and everything else, but it doesn't domino out. we change it, then there's a new sort of creativity that comes with that. And although everybody will be well-intended, it'll be the next architect that wasn't part of this sort of era who comes along and says, well, I don't understand why the rule is only 24 feet because blah, 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 you know, and they will have a good logic too. So one of the things we're going to have to do in this is sort of come up with the scenarios that aren't appropriate as well as the ones we think are, as sort of a method for sort of parameterizing how we want to do this.
And I think what's helpful is the code does give the authority to the town planner to interpret it.
Right.
And so having a purpose statement might be helpful,
Yes.
so that it kind of carries forward why the code was written
Right.
the way it was.
I agree.
So we just maybe keep that in mind.
I would add one more thing too. I think those are great, but this is the old unintended consequences
Right.
that comes up.
Exactly.
So what I don't want, you especially and anyone else that's out here, we're really fortunate that we don't have design review. And the last thing we want is all the stuff we're doing here that all of a sudden leads to a uprising where people say, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. And now all of a sudden everybody's clamoring for a design review. So whatever we can do to keep government small and review small and everything else, I mean, you know, Eric's right. I mean, the cheating factor is going to come in, right? No matter what we do.
Optimize.
Sadly.
Optimize.
Right. That's a better word.
Well, just from my view, first of all, I totally agree with Commissioner Lamb that we don't want to go there, and I think the rules are pretty well defined, and you know, I think we should maintain the rules and avoid design review. Saying that, getting back to time, I think we need to think about this because you know, I don't think this is a 1 month thing. I don't think it's a 2 month thing. It might be, you know, 6 months to kind of flush out some ideas, and maybe some of this is, you know, we experiment with it a little bit and try to look for those loopholes. But once again, there's always going to be someone that comes along and figures out how to do something a little bit different that really bends it. And you know, maybe I'm a little bit guilty of that here and there, but you know, I'm not one of the blatant people that are out there just trying to take it over the top. So I just caution you that you can't really prevent it. You know, somebody is going to find a way.
Well, it'll be honest reinterpretation, right? Very often. Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay. Any other comments? All right. That's it? Nobody else? Going once? All right, going final. All right, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion and maybe direction.
I brought a visual aid.
All right, there you go. All right, you've been using,
building
look
blocks.
at that. Lego set. All right,
Okay.
all right, there you go, man. You are the best.
So I don't remember how this goes though. This way. Okay, so so the problem is that if this is the end wall,
I think this is getting rotated, so that's all right.
I gotta rotate it?
Yeah, I think there you go.
Okay, so if this guy is our end wall, the question is what can this be? We can make a bunch of squares, or we can make something that's
Right.
attractive.
Right.
And if this guy can only be 30 feet and this guy is 22, it would seem that you know, something along the lines of line of sight makes some difference, some sense. But it also depends upon the width. So where this wall could be and what its height would be has to have some boundaries, and I would assume that you know, with some thought we could put some parameters in place that would make the position of this wall something that we could all live with, something that was higher than 22 and at the same time, you know, giving another elevation or, you know, a little more height to another part of it. But I mean, you can clearly say, you know, looking at this, if this is the end wall, I mean, these side walls with a flat roof, it doesn't match up. So So,
Yeah, that just becomes a big box.
yeah, yeah, so, you know, I kind of would like to see something along the lines of making some sort of triangular shape, and that the sidewalls, if we,
Need some kind of diagonal or some kind of.
yeah,
angle
the sidewalk could be, as high as where it intersects, so, if it comes down like this, the sidewalk could be, I don't know.
You're talking about like similar to the 45-degree or the
Similar to it, but I think we need to have some,
Right.
some parameters on it as to where this can be with regard to the shape of the building, because, we got big lots and you could make a really long building, or even have the, front wall be 8 feet or 10 feet high, and the back be the 34 foot high, so that you end up with the ability to have a sidewall that's pretty big.
Well, that goes back to the purpose statement comment, because for one, so there's an element of this that is for the neighbor, the privacy and all that, and the visual lights and all this other stuff, and then the other part of it is just the architectural significance that we're putting into the community, and so that's where the rule sort of builds that in, because we can't do it as a body, which we don't want. I agree with you. Don't go down that path, because then you get this. I've been on 2 of those boards, and they get much more political than this one. Let me tell you. So yeah, there's a lot to think about. One other idea that we might want to think about is, rather than some kind of a code change now, is to give a purpose statement for what we're trying to accomplish and set up some guidelines for the planners, such that they could say, we have been given these guidelines for exceptions to be considered by the board if you want to understand what they're thinking about. And that was one way to experiment with it. We could basically come up with the interpretation of what might be a code and play with that for a while to see, and then bring it forward, and then we still get the ability to review it, but they have a cleaner shot at saying, we think the board is behind this kind of an experiment if you're interested in it, otherwise you're on your own. Something along those lines.
Which board are you referring to?
Us.
Oh, okay.
I'd just be concerned about the legal authority for you to make that kind of a decision and
Yeah.
bring it forward. But the area that you might want to look at doing that with is the current language, and I need to read it again, of the special structure permit, is rather than have the entire house meet the setbacks, have it be to the offending element, and then that's something that you do review.
Right.
So I think that's an area where, if you kind of wanted to have an interim step, might be a good place to look.
So I think Fort Knox is helpful here.
Yeah.
But
For those of you
I
that
don't.
missed this, it has a
Yeah,
great entry.
I don't. So given that this was to be a roundtable, I think it'd be helpful if we didn't close the public comment, because again, we're so unless all of you are comfortable with architecture. I mean, I don't know. I get what Mary's saying, but I don't. From an architect standpoint, I'd love to hear their input. Since this is a roundtable and you closed it, so we might want to open that again so they can do their.
I can open it.
Yeah. But mine is just give and take on it, because I think I guess there's a potential that there's a likelihood somebody would do that. I just don't know from a design standpoint. I think let's focus on the ones that are the most likely. I mean, the outliers I think are great, because let's make sure those don't happen. I just don't know enough about architecture to be any help here.
Yeah, well, my brother Frank Lloyd Wright. No, let's go ahead. You have any comments on that?
I have a question
Yeah, go ahead.
before we start that.
Yeah.
Lisa, are there rules on window placements? Isn't there a rule about how high the windows can be?
Yeah, only on accessory structures.
Just on
There's a
accessory.
limitation of 9 foot from finished grade when it's adjacent to side or rear yard, but not on the main residence.
As you bring up accessory structures, just to be clear, we're not going to be considering sidewall and wall height on accessory structures.
I think whatever we adopt for the main residence, we're gonna wanna be consistent on the accessory structure, because typically, you've designed the main residence, you want the accessory structure
Right now, the
architecturally.
accessory structure is half of what the main site is.
Yeah, and I would say we would wanna be consistent with, the sidewall,
Mhm.
max height, but maybe give some flexibility, like we would for the main residence.
Right.
So there's sort of an embedded set of points that come up. So the definition of the roof versus the sidewall is one, all right? The height of the overall structure is another one, right? So you're gonna have a sidewall that blends in if it's 22 feet. So one design issue is that, the other is the absolute height. What are the other issues that we come up with? So I think some of this has to do with breaking down what those
Right.
individual elements are, and make sure we understand what we're talking about an individual element. And then that may make it a little bit easier to figure out which ones we want to address and which ones we don't.
So then, we're looking at, like you said, overall height,
Right.
end wall, sidewall height, the setback.
Well, the definition of end wall, sidewall. We could keep
Just
it.
as far as items that need to be discussed. and-
Well,
and
we
what we're
could
gonna do.
keep the regulation the same way if our definition of sidewall and end wall would be interpreted differently.
Mhm.
That would not require a change. That would be.
I would still change the code in the definition section.
Okay,
Yes.
but that theoretically, that would be a very minimal thing. Basically, it would say if you can have your sidewall and roof one of two ways: 22 feet or 22 feet, or 24, or 24 feet, whatever it would be, like 2 feet for the roof, or have it shaped at 22 feet if your roof comes down, something like that. So then we'd be dealing with that one issue. But then there's other elements too. What are those?
There's not many other elements.
Really?
I mean, the code's pretty straightforward. We do have the tower provision that was added, that's very helpful, and the bay windows that we interpret to give a little more flexibility.
Setback of like a secondary wall on the same plane.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you could consider to give them some more flexibility,
Right.
because that's typically what
I think that's
architects
pretty
come in and say, well, no, it's, the sidewall ended here,
Right.
and now that's a different plane, that's a different,
And how do we
element.
interpret that setback? Because,
Correct.
if it's just a flat wall and everyone
Right.
higher than 22 feet,
Right.
we're requiring a setback from the lot line anyway.
Right.
So is there a
Right,
secondary
right.
consideration for a setback within the
And,
building
and,
site?
and where would you measure that setback
Well,
to?
it's-
All these, we don't have a perfect rectangular house in every situation that's right on the setbacks. So sometimes they're well in from the setback, sometimes they're right on it. So do you want all these dimensions to be from setback or from the front face of the exterior wall to the next plane element? What are you trying to break up?
What does the code say about setback for the 22? If someone wants to go over 22, what is it? How much further back in terms of a setback?
For each 1 foot you want to go up, you need to increase by 5 feet
1 to 5,
Lot,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
to come into the planning commission, and that's for the entire house.
So everything
used
comes in,
to
all
be-
four sides come in
Yeah.
5 feet.
Yeah, I think it used to be you could go up 1 foot and increase by 1.5 feet, and then it changed several years ago.
And what triggered the change?
I think they were seeing more requests for
Bulky.
special structure permit, not
Okay.
necessarily bulky, they just were seeing more of these projects come forward.
Okay.
I think it's worth considering just down the road, looking at that offending wall rather than squeezing the entire building
I think
site.
that's a really good option.
I do.
Yeah.
It's
Are
a
we
good
missing any?
compromise.
What else?
You want me to open up the public hearing?
Well, I think you should because.
All right, well, I got it.
Are we
I'm just trying-
missing any?
I-
Are we
I'm
missing any?
This is not a study session, so it has a
No.
different procedure associated with it. That's why I'm
No.
gonna do it. So I'll go ahead and open up the public
Yeah.
hearing. All right.
Just commenting on this diagram, like if you had your 24 foot at the setback,
Mhm.
that's going to look a lot bigger than if you have your 24 foot, set in 15 feet from the setback. So, talking about, we understand the idea of reducing bulk and not putting a 30-foot thing right at the setback line. So, this idea of the diagonal from the front of the lot line to the back of the lot line, it should probably come from all angles so that, if you don't want to always then be building in the middle to get a little bit taller. Sorry. I think coming in from all the lot lines and adjusting the height accordingly would be one way of doing this, and allowing for different roof heights while also reducing bulk, which seems like that's the primary objective of, you know, not having a 30-foot wall right at the allowable setback. So.
And I guess a few ways to proceed, because I don't think we're solving the problem tonight.
No.
You can just give me some direction to continue to work, that you're open to some ideas, you know? I mean, this is the first time we've talked about it. So yes, is this something you want to study further?
Yes.
And I can, you know, work with the architects, come back with several different graphics, several different options that they're going to prepare for us. And, or you can establish an ad hoc subcommittee to work with staff to meet directly with the architects, kind of your choice. But that might be maybe more productive if we come back with some graphic examples of several different options. One could be...
Or models.
Or models, sure. And I think we've got some good comments that we can maybe work with.
Any more public comment before I close public? I was trained on procedural stuff, and that's so I'm going to close public. Oh, you have something else?
Well,
It's still open.
I just want to say, I don't want to create any rules that start dictating a form. So, and I think a little bit of the basic examples, you see a lot of homes that are the way they are because it meets the rules, right?
Yeah, come on up. Let's go and get you on the mic.
And that's all I just want to say. So, max flexibility is always the best because there's a lot of creativity. And if we say, you know, even if we could say 24 feet, we're still going to end up with a lot of things that start looking alike. So I don't want to limit your thinking to creating a form. I think we need to give you ideas that gives us flexibility so we don't end up with a lot of contemporary homes that start looking alike, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think a challenge for this whole format, and that's the trade-off of not having design review, is that the rule does create a structural thing, right? And then without a design review, you're going to get, you know, less freedom. All right, so design review gives you freedom, and it also opens up Pandora's box. Rules give you more structure, and you got to be creative within them, but it's definitely going to be more structured. So that's going to be the trade-off all the time. So I think of the two, we've chosen the latter. So just be aware. We'll have a tendency to be more along that line.
Okay.
So what do we need to get Lisa going on with these guys?
I need to close public hearing
Just
first.
one small comment.
Yeah.
I think what was helpful with what you have in your code as far as the exception with the tower, it gives us the opportunity to go higher in certain places, to create this in and out and up and down, and giving us a percentage of things you want to keep in that scale, and then a percentage of things we're allowed to come out, and then we can play with where we're going to do that and how we're going to do that, and create an interesting structure that doesn't seem massive. So having that exception and having that flexibility is very helpful.
That's an idea for the percentages. All right, anything else before I close for the 75th time? All right, I'll close public hearing. All right, bring it back. All right, so you need direction. Is that
Just to
ideas?
continue to study it and come back with some options.
All right, good.
It's fine.
Yeah, and we're okay with staff doing that alone and have this up to me? Okay, is that all right? All right.
So do we need a formal motion? No?
Consensus?
Yeah, do your job.
Okay.
All right, good. Any other comments before I go to the next item? All right, next item is a scintillating item on item 4B,
Thank you for
general
your,
plan.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, good.
Very valuable.
All right, thank you. And we got it for a discount rate tonight.
That's the best part.
Continue to be involved too as we move forward. Thank you.
If this had been last night, there'd be no one here.
Yeah, exactly.
Or tomorrow.
All right. General plan consistency determination for the capital improvement program fiscal year, and there's a recommendation.
So-
was here.
The state planning and zoning law require that you make a general plan consistency determination before the city council takes action on the capital improvement program. And the, surprisingly, or not surprisingly, the CIP program is almost identical to the one you saw last year, but there are two exceptions. Under streets, it's the neighborhood traffic management program is a new item. And under town buildings, park and facility, the Caltrain station, I think it was whopping $1,000 or something.
Yeah.
Identify needed repairs and restorations to the structure. Those are the only 2 items that are new since you reviewed this last year, that I've presented it all for your consideration.
The neighborhood traffic management is page 22, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, it was proposed at $25,000. I'm not sure that that's gonna buy much in the way of neighborhood management. But,
Well, they could always spend more, right, if they wanted to, but they can't, yeah, I mean.
Well, that's
That's
the
the
council's proposed budget,
Yeah.
and some may be signs, or I don't know what they might put in, because I don't think you get a roundabout for that.
So being the new items, being the new items, that's just kind of a starting point as far as, and then we get to the first year of the plan, and they were like, well, you know, we kind of underestimated, or so it's not been there before, so they had to start somewhere.
Right, yeah. And that, I think the traffic calming program came out of the Traffic and Transportation Commission or Circulation Commission. You're on that as well? Transportation, thank you. Committee, yeah. So you may know more.
well, it really came out of Public Works and,
Okay.
but there is a plan or a process that they're trying to put in place where neighborhoods could get together and present a case for having some sort of traffic management device, whether it be, one of those signs that says, speed limit 25, your speed
Oh, yeah.
45,
Right.
Yeah.
or a speed hump or something like that. Just because there is a plan that says you can request these things doesn't necessarily mean that you would get one of those. And for $25,000, I don't think anything is going to fit the bill.
Slightly used. But
Yeah.
No
But,
power.
lights are burned out.
Yeah. But perhaps it's a mark on the wall.
Yeah, it's a starter.
Yeah.
Well, is the goal for us to say, yes, the council's proposal for the budget amount's correct?
No.
Or,
No.
it's
It's
just
consistent.
go with it, run with it, go?
Yeah.
I think,
Yes.
yeah, I think a sign that says "slow down for the red-legged frog" would be very,
There's no CEQA, there's no, looks like it's exempt, everything's,
It's consistent with what was proposed. I mean, that's our test is that there was something that was just out of consistency. We'd have to say. Right?
Yeah, well out of character with the town and the goals, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
happy to make a motion unless anybody has comment. I move the Planning Commission find the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2016, 2017 through 2020, 2021, and the projects included in that program are consistent with the Atherton general plan for the reasons noted in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. No opposition. All right. Commissioners report. Item 5.
I just wanted to let everyone know that about a couple of weeks after our last meeting, I met with Bill Chang of PG&E. He reached out to me and just wanted to get together for coffee and talk about PG&E's overall strategy and ideas on how to do outreach to not just our community, but how they're doing it throughout the Bay Area. It was very pleasant. I really appreciated him making that effort, and I think he is genuinely trying to just establish open, transparent communication. So.
He asked for all of the commissioners' email addresses, and I said I don't provide that to the public, but if he wanted to send me a message, I would forward it. And so he had specifically asked for Commissioner Joanne's because, yes, you have a little more concern than some of the other members, and so you agreed to provide it. So if anyone else would like to meet with him, I'm sure he'd be more than happy to do so. Just let me know and I can connect you.
So did you feel better after meeting with him, or where'd you end up?
Interestingly, he showed me a picture on his iPhone of the tree that they cut
Yeah.
in the corner.
Yeah.
And it was almost
Oh my goodness.
all the way up the trunk. They didn't know that was going to be the case,
Yeah.
but their arborist, I think they might have had 2 arborists review it. They both indicated that there was something suspicious about the tree. There was no disease.
Yeah.
So it could, you know,
Did
I don't
it
know.
drill a hole in it though?
It was, I don't know how wide the trunk was.
It wasn't
Pretty good
super
size,
big.
I bet
Yeah,
you.
it
Not
was
super
okay,
big,
yeah.
yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, that-
I would say there was, okay, so this is a picture I saw on iPhone. I would say it was 70% hollow.
Wow.
well, how would that happen? That's weird, like
Very
something,
weird.
something bubbled up in the
So
middle.
something imminent
Yeah,
was
yeah.
probably likely.
Good.
You
All
know,
right,
a really
good.
heavy
We
windstorm
landed
or
on our
something
feet
like
again.
that.
All right.
So your gut was right. And I felt better about agreeing to, yeah.
Well, it's funny too, because now, like, my office is right across the street from that, and so
Oh, is that right?
it was, you know, watching it come down is kind of like anyone. No one ever wants to see a tree come down.
Right.
But as I'm watching now, you drive by and you don't even notice
Yeah,
it.
right.
Thing.
Right.
And if they go back further and kind of whatever they're going to do,
Create the canopy further
create
back.
that canopy,
Mhm.
you know, it'll serve the same thing. If
Right.
it wasn't healthy or if it was a danger, especially with kids, I mean, there are hundreds of them that go by that every day.
Yeah, that
not more.
corner is,
Not more.
there's a
Right.
lot of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they're all over there,
Yeah.
especially with that stoplight the way it is.
Anybody else?
Nope.
All right, I've got one thing. Dave Sakai emailed us. He emailed you, didn't he? He's a person over in. There was a location over in Green Oaks Drive that was a vacant home that was bought by a developer, I guess.
Oh, yes,
All right, and
Right.
he emailed me and the city manager and he's
yes, he's
and-
following up, code enforcement.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
it was an issue that came to me on email and when the staff got on it right away and I happened to be out bicycling around. I actually looked at the place. It was it was a vacant home and there was a pool and there was like 2 feet of water in the bottom of the pool and it was dirty water and it was not fenced off and there was a bunch of stuff and he highlighted some things but staff got on it right away and it got cleared up and there's a fence around it now and it's fixed. So just want to let you know that he reached out and staff was already on it, but it came to me. Okay. Anything else?
Were you in a costume of some sort going around?
The superhero.
Were you which superhero were you when you were on your bike? Because I heard about that. And it ended up in the blotter in an almanac.
No, but I have theme music.
Some guy with a ghetto blaster. And he was just all over the place. I'm like, geez.
I have it on my iPhone where I went. Staff report. You got me all blushing.
Yeah, you're scaring the camera there. You're purple there.
Staff report.
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you. You got me off the hook. I need a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Oh, that was fine. All in favor say aye. Aye.